Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to Draft Week here on the Dirty Birds and Brews podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Knight, with my co-host, Tre'Shon Diaz. It's time for Tuesday Takes, Draft Week, and also Tre'Shon mentioned birthday week, so happy early birthday, right? Because the birthday has not happened yet, I believe, but at some point in the near future, it will happen. So, I'll forget because I'm terrible with birthdays. So happy birthday, Tre'Shon. But
appreciate it, Kevin. And the gift of draft week is the best one that I could ask for, because we're finally going to get some answers. We're going to figure out how the Falcons are going to fix their pass rush problem, because this is the year. They're going to do it. They're going to fix this pass rush, and we're gonna get to stop talking about it, because we can finally talk about something else. It's gonna be great.
Exactly. They'll definitely not leave us with more questions than answers. They'll definitely do exactly what we want. There won't be any drama whatsoever.
Very straightforward process.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it'll be, we'll just follow the board the whole way down. It'll be easy mode. No, you guys know what's going to happen. There's probably going to be chaos. There's going to be unexpected things. That's why the draft, the NFL, I think, correctly realized that the draft is just great television. I mean, it's fun. It's exciting. Obviously, we're going to be live here on the Falcoholic Live for all 3 nights of the draft. So definitely join us. I think we're going to start at 7:30 on Thursday, 7 on Friday, and noon on Saturday. So join us. We're lining up guests now. A lot of folks are going to be popping in and out throughout that. A lot of people from across the Falcoholic timeline and Falcons Twitter, so definitely come join us for that. Those shows will be, listed on the channel later today. This is coming out on Tuesday, obviously. So keep an eye out for that. We'll be giving away NFL Shop gift cards once again. Thanks to George Costanza for donating those. We got one $50 card going out on Thursday, one on Friday, and then 2 on Saturday. One of those is reserved for our patrons and channel members as a special thank you. All the other 3 are completely open. All you got to do to be eligible for those is just follow the show on Twitter, subscribe, and like the episode. Easy peasy, right? Join, and you need to be on Discord as well, so we can contact you to give you the code. So if you're not on the Falcoholic Discord channel, the link is in the show description. It's it'll pop up on screen here as well. Make sure you're joined for that, so we can give you the code so you can redeem it. That is an important part of the step. If you actually want the card,
part of the process.
If you actually want it, that is important. Otherwise, I get to keep it, and I don't need any more Falcons gear. In case you've seen how I wear something different on every single show, but we're excited to get into it. We're going to be giving you guys our final sort of thoughts on the draft process, what we're hearing, what we're thinking, final Falcons draft predictions, all that good stuff wrapped into an episode today as we kind of prepare you guys for the immediate run up to the draft, which is only 3 days away. By the time you listen to this, it's probably 2.5 or less at that point. So exciting stuff. And we'll also be back on Wednesday night for our final live Falcons mock draft for the people. And that one's always going to be a lot of fun. So yeah, Tre'Shon, anything?
Age of content this week.
Yeah.
Be ready. It's coming your way.
Yes, a tidal wave of content. Yeah, I mean, anything in particular you're looking forward to this week?
The Falcons edge rusher that they take at pick 15, or the heist that Terry Fontenot pulls off after he robs some other poor franchise with a trade down, and then selects an edge rusher in the first round. I think that's probably what I'm most excited for. On the show front, I can't pick one. They're all worth watching and tuning into. So you don't really want to miss anything that's going to be coming out this week, because it's all going to be very important information that affects the draft night.
Yes, it's all going to be ultra bangers the whole way down. So you really can't go wrong with that content. But we're here for you guys, and we're looking forward to hanging out with you guys over draft weekend. Before we get started with our final draft takes here on the Dirty Birds and Brews Tuesday Takes edition, real quick, I want to bring you guys a word from our sponsor, BetOnline. And folks, BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all your sports betting action. Baseball season's in full swing. The Braves are, maybe turning around. I don't know. I don't watch baseball. I just hear lots of complaining on Twitter from Braves fans. But I also saw, unfortunately, I did actually watch the final Hawks game. So you can blame me for that if you want, because I don't usually. But that was a heartbreaker. I tuned in right before, I tuned in when they managed to take it to overtime, and I was like, okay, I'm the good luck charm, great. And then they blew it in overtime, which I don't know if that's par for the course for the Hawks or not. But Uh, NBA playoffs going on, NHL playoffs going on, lots of stuff to bet on. BetOnline's also got a tremendous line of draft props for all you draft prop aficionados out there. You can get really degen with what BetOnline's got going for the draft. I know, like, who was it that I saw? I think it was like Imanwari to go in the first round was like a couple days ago. It was like minus 1,500. It was something ridiculous, and it's like I think Imanwari is going in the first round, but like if the other side of those odds is like, and I think Trevor Sikkema shouted this out. Like the other side of those odds is anything like above like +7, +800. Like I'm taking that.
I would
I'm
definitely
taking
take
that.
it in round 2.
Yeah,
like,
because he's not a lock.
Iman Ward, because I think that he's gonna.
He could.
Like the hype seemed to have come down. I think we're gonna see a round 2 pick, but who knows?
Yeah, but if that's a perfect example. Like if you guys feel a certain way about a prospect where you think you can make plus money on it, BetOnline's got a ton of stuff, like a comically large amount of draft props up. Go check those guys out. They've got the largest selection of odds on everything. Number one source for all your sports wagering information. They've also got a new BetOnline casino with all the top Vegas style games, including poker and live slots, all that fun stuff. Make sure when you sign up to use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, to get access to the latest promotions. BetOnline, the game starts here. All right, Tre'Shon. Now, I saw in your latest mock draft, which, of course, as tradition demands, that has to be, the one for all the marbles, right? No, just kidding. Probably going to put out like 3 mock drafts in the next 2 days. But I saw you had Shamar Stewart at 15. Now, is that a personal thing, or are you hearing something? What's sort of your take on Shamar Stewart going to the Falcons?
Yeah, so, I pretty early on in the process, I was, pro Shamar Stewart, and that stance hasn't really changed for me at all. And I know that this guy is like the most polarizing prospect, I think, among this fan base, but I think like in the draft in general. I had people who were like, yes, great pick. I had other people that were like, we just lost everything. Historically, we can't develop guys like this, et cetera, et cetera. I think Shamar Stewart makes a ton of sense, especially at pick 15, because while the production is not there, totally fair, this is like, from an attribute standpoint, like a top 10 athlete and a top 10 pick. And I like what he offers in terms of 3-down ability. He's a guy who, one of the biggest issues with the Falcons edge players that they've tried to develop and take in general is they all kind of get beat up on rundowns, especially when they were in their rookie seasons. They had to get subbed in. You needed to wait for opportunistic, moments in order for them to get reps. With Stewart, you don't have to play that annoying pitch count game, or where you're trying to sub him in to when he has an advantage, because his body gives him an advantage on every down. He's going to have the ability to play the run, which means he's going to be out there on first and second down when teams also throw the football. Like we always talk about, like we want to get them in 3rd down situations when we know they're going to throw, the ball, but we've all watched enough football at this point that they throw the football on every single down. So if I don't have a guy who offers me anything as a pass rusher out there on, run downs only, and they throw the ball, well, guess what? That's the story of the Atlanta Falcons. You've got James Smith-Williams out there instead of Arnold Ebiketie. You've got these guys who are good at doing like half the job, but I need somebody who can be out there for me as much as possible. Stewart's a guy that needs as many reps as possible if he is going to develop into the player that, if you're like me, that you believe he can become. He's not, a guy that's going to do well on the bench. And, for people that are like, well, why is this the guy that they develop? Why is this the year that you believe that they can do it? And it's because of Nate Ali. It's because of the coaching staff changes that did happen. Jeff Ulbrich just came from the Jets, where they were taking edge rushers in the 1st round, like every year, 2nd round, 3rd round. And guess what? Those guys produced. Nate Ali, everywhere he's been, his guys produce. He's worked with some veterans who were established, and he's worked with some younger players who needed some help to get going as well. We made these staff changes for a reason, and it's very easy to fall into the, same old Falcons rhetoric. But again, these are not the same old Falcons. There's new coaches here. So, hey, I'm going to lean on these hires because Raheem Morris said these are the hires that are going to fix the issue. And so we need to hold them to it. And so if they don't fix the issue, then we know what we know. And if they're able to get something going and we're like, hey, Shamar Stewart's rookie season was 5 sacks and 30 pressures, then we're off to a great start. And I know those numbers don't sound extremely impressive to people, but I did a whole piece on rookie pass rusher production a couple of weeks ago, and you'll see that those figures are right in line with like the average to best of like what you get in terms of return productivity wise year one. So I think Shamar can do it. I think we've got the right coaches. So I felt comfortable putting it out there like, hey, I still feel good about this pick at 15, and still think the team should consider it because this is a rare athlete.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you're looking for someone to develop, you would have a hard time finding a more prototypical edge rusher than Shamar Stewart. I mean, he's the new perfect 10. The previous perfect 10 was Trayvon Walker, who went number 1 overall. Now, I think we could all agree that was probably an overdraft, but not by that much. I mean, considering what he's turned into.
Spot,
yeah, I mean,
opinion.
in hindsight, yeah, it's really not that much of an overdraft. I mean, maybe yeah, but otherwise, I mean, he's definitely. But that's what you're hoping for, basically. You're hoping Shamar can have that Trayvon Walker sort of move as he develops, and you know, the Falcons sooner or later you have to be able to develop your D-line talent. Like there's so few finished products coming out of college. And the ones that you do see, like Abdul Carter, are going to go in the top 5. Do you want to be picking in the top 5 again? No, you don't. I mean, and you can't really build a team out of top 5 picks unless you're god awful every single year. So the Falcons are going to have to find a way to be able to take some of these guys that need development. And Shamar Stewart's a great example of that. You know, he obviously doesn't finish. That's his thing. Like, he just doesn't finish plays. But he causes lots of disruption against the run and the pass. He's got all the traits that you want. And, you know, I think people get a little too wrapped up in the lack of production when you see that he's making plays happen for everyone else around him. And also take into account, you know, Texas A&M's front. That's just what they do. Like, these guys, they're making them play 4-eye. They're not necessarily going to put up big numbers. I mean, Nick Scorton went from being like a double-digit sack guy to significantly less production at Texas A&M because that's just what Texas A&M asked their D-line to do. It's not, I don't love it. I don't like it. You know, Georgia's the same way. Like, those Georgia guys never have high sack numbers, but they always go high in the draft because teams understand that this, like, that scheme is asking them to do a specific thing, and the lack of production isn't necessarily alarming. It's the same conversation for like Mykel Williams, who I think is also in the same vein of a Shamar Stewart, like another player who kind of under the radar is probably in consideration at 15 if they're not in on Mike Green. Because the one thing that we don't know is if the Falcons are in on Mike Green or not. Some people are adamant that they are. Some people are adamant that they aren't. So I don't really know what to make of that. And I don't know if your thoughts on Mike Green have changed at all, Tre'Shon, over the last week or so. But to me, I've just gotten more confused. Like, some people swear that he's high on their board. And some people swear he's off their board. So you know, who knows? One side is smokescreen, right? But I feel quite certain that the Falcons are telling people two different things to create this dichotomy. But who knows?
Yeah, you know, it's always tough to say what's real and what's not. The only thing I think for sure, you know, I still feel good about what I heard coming out of the Senior Bowl, which was that the team liked him. You know, following that, we saw Raheem Morris was getting up close and personal at Pro Day, running drills himself with Green. And so I think it's very obvious that interest is there. And like everything, it's just to what degree. And how, you know, is he somebody they like enough at 15, or is he somebody that they want to trade down? It's kind of like with the James Pierce talk. When I hear, oh, the team really likes James Pierce, I'm like, yeah, you know, that actually makes a lot of sense, especially in a trade down scenario. This is a guy that everybody's like, he's going to fall, you know, some people think he's going to fall into the second or something like that. Atlanta is able to pull off a trade with Houston. Pick 25 becomes a really good spot to, I think, to land, you know, whether it's him, Scourton, and Ezeraku, but maybe even Mike Green, because I do think a lot of people have kind of decided that regardless of the off-field issues, that like Mike Green's going in like the top 15. But I don't necessarily think that that's true. I think there's a really good chance that he falls out of the top 20, and that there's some teams that they would like much rather prefer to go in a different direction first than like taking the risk on him, because it is still a risk. So that's kind of like where I'm at. In this, like, in a similar vein, it's like how legit is the OT talk? How badly do they really want to tackle? Today we heard that teams like Houston are calling up asking about offensive linemen, looking for trades, stuff like that. So it's like, oh hey, when Trey and Kevin were talking about, like, maybe the Falcons are trying to work the lines here. Maybe they're trying to get other teams thinking like, oh, well, we think the Dolphins might take someone. We think Arizona might take someone. We think all these teams in this middle of the pack. Well, hey, you've got the Falcons. Maybe we'll pick up the phone. Maybe we'll give you a deal so that you don't have to worry about it. You can jump Denver, who's another team people think really want to get aggressive and trade up because they have the assets. That's kind of like the joy of draft season, is all these talks and all these little mind games that teams like to play.
Yeah. If you want to know who's going to trade up, look at who has extra picks. If you want to know who's going to trade down, look at who doesn't have extra picks. That's the one constant every year. Now, there's a ton of teams that want to trade down, and I know a lot of fans are like, oh, well, that means the Falcons can't trade down. No, there are teams that want to trade up. It's all about the value proposition, and that's why, I think when we've done some trades, like on our mocks, we've often had the Falcons taking less than market value. Not significantly less, but not pushing crazy return. And I think if you want to get a trade done, you have to be the team that's willing to work with another team, work together on this. Like, they want to come up, but they don't want to overpay. You need picks, and they know it. So just work something out. You don't need, and in this draft class, both teams, I think, could benefit from that. But you're exactly right about the offensive tackles. I mean, we should probably, yell at national media for stealing our draft takes, because we were talking about offensive tackles,
talking about this
for months, and they've stolen our
out.
draft takes, so we should get some compensation for that. But, yeah, it's. I think I agree with you, and I'm not changing my tune on that. I don't think they're serious about offensive tackle in the first round, unless it's like Membu or something that falls. But he's not going to fall, and if he does, then sure, absolutely at 15, if you want to go that route or like extract a massive price for someone trading down, then yeah, let's go for it. But I think they are serious about offensive tackle at some point, but not at 15. I mean, I and it seems like it's very possible that Banks could go even before 15, and then after that, that's kind of it. So we'll see. I think if Banks does make it to 15, that's an intriguing trade down opportunity. I think if we see, Shedeur obviously fall to 15, that's a great trade down opportunity. I spent probably 20 minutes with Thor Nystrom on Monday's episode talking about the Browns coming up from the second round. Yeah. And Thor thinks that's very possible, but they could do it for Milroe. Apparently, he strongly believes that the Browns are in on Milroe. And that would probably be, obviously if like the Saints go for Shedeur at 9 or something like that, or we see like multiple quarterbacks go. Apparently the buzz is that the Saints are going to take Dart at 9. That seems to be the buzz now, which I fully support that. Go Saints.
I also tweeted that out like a week ago. So again, like, just
everyone's stealing your draft takes
here.
What's happening?
I said the Saints should strongly consider Dart at 9, and I stand by that take. I think they should.
That was a very serious take, and they should respect that. But I mean, I did think it was interesting, but like, we don't really know. Like, I feel like pretty much it's been a constant in the NFL that quarterbacks get pushed up. That just always happens, except for the Desmond Ridder, Kenny Pickett year. That year, they didn't get put, except for Pickett. He was the one. Yeah. But, like, everybody else was like, no, we really shouldn't. And they were actually right. Everybody, really maintained that they could sort of, like, just wait till the third, and these guys weren't worth it. And they were absolutely right.
Agreement. We're all like, we're not taking any of these guys.
Yeah, and they were correct.
Like, cool.
Except maybe Malik Willis, which is funny. Like, maybe Malik was actually the one good quarterback the whole time. But it did take a while. But in this class, it's obviously not going to be the Ridder Pickett year, but we will get Cam at 1. I think basically the Titans have all but made it official, that they're taking Ward at 1. I think they've said they're not going to trade down at this point.
Cam's basically made it official.
Yeah. So at that point, you get the one quarterback. It doesn't seem like the Browns are going to take one at 2. They've sort of moved on from that. But again, if the Browns feel like they can trade back into the first, and whether that's 15, if Shedeur is still there, or later for, if Shedeur lasts or whatever, Or maybe they really do want Milroe. I don't know. But the Browns have a ton of picks, so like the Browns could absolutely pull off a trade. Like, I know. I think on Monday's show, Thor seemed to think like the Browns could get it done for 2/3, like, and the Falcons would be happy to take that. And yeah, obviously including the second rounder as the trade up pick. But I mean, I would be happy to take 2/3. Like, I mean, I know some people would be like, oh, that's not great value, but you could probably tack on in like another late pick or something, or maybe something next year to get it done.
Like,
but
Terry's not known for maximizing trade values in drafts. Like, let's be real. This is not to be about the player, but like the Rugeroro deal is like an example last year. Like, he got shredded for that trade because it was the value did not like add up at all from a pick standpoint. It made no sense. That's one of the like main reasons he got jumped last year after the Penix pick, was because people looked at the numbers on the Rugeroro deal and they're like, this doesn't pencil, the points system. And I'll be honest, I'm not too deep into the points draft trading system because there's a human element to everything. And, like we were saying earlier, so far from what we're hearing, it sounds like there's like a couple of teams that want to trade up, like a very small amount, but a lot of people want to trade down. So who's going to give you the best deal? And who's the GM that's had the track record of showing like, hey, like, I don't really care about this little point system. If I really like this guy, I'll make a deal or a move to make this get done. And that's why, like, hey, the Falcons at 15, someone like the Texans who might, hey, we'll offer you one of our two like future, like they have two 2026 second round picks. We'll throw in one of those, our second round this year, and like a fourth or something. And like, again, on paper, people be like, well, they really didn't grab as much as I was hoping for, but you're working against the market. Like, a large group of teams want to trade down because they see, once you get to a certain range, like this class has depth, but that also means that there's a lot of similar talent level at a certain point. And so teams aren't going to feel pressure to overdraft like they do in some other years. So I'm with you in that I think like, hey, someone's just going to try to figure out, okay, who can give me the best deal here to work with? And when you look at Terry's draft history, he seems like a guy that people are going to want to call early and be like, hey, the board falls this way. Would you really be open to doing something? And I think, Terry, it's very rare that a GM talks draft in January, like in the immediate final year presser. And like off the bat, he said, we're willing and looking to trade down. And so I'm going to take them at their word because they don't really hide what they want to do all too often when it comes to their draft moves. Penix is like the biggest secret, really, or surprise that they've pulled off. Every other move, it's kind of like, yeah, we heard they loved Bijan. We heard they loved Drake. We heard they loved Pitts. Like, with this all makes a lot of sense to us.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think there's a ton of energy around some trades, but I think it's like there's definitely a higher volume of teams that want to trade down. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see who is actually willing to trade up and who is willing to trade down, and who makes it to which pick, because I think teams will try to wait as long as they can, given the, I think like the Falcons at 15 are obviously one. I think there's a bunch of teams in the sort of top 10 that would like to, but I think no one's really going to pay the price to get up that high. It's just maybe for GT, if like someone's like obsessed, apparently GT is going to go really early. So that probably won't even be a factor. And we'll see what else goes on there. But I think the Falcons really do present a good like mix of, you're probably still going to have your choice of like a tackle or whatever at that spot. So I think a lot of teams will probably lay the groundwork for a trade with Atlanta there, even if it never comes to fruition and we won't ever hear about it. Like, I think there's probably plenty of teams that have reached out just in case their guy is there. And then like the Steelers apparently want to trade down from 21. And the Vikings obviously want to trade down from 24. So, those are three spots that teams feel like they can find a way to move up or down, to get there. And it just depends on what the board looks like. But if the board, falls a certain way, they might be like, okay, we don't need to trade up to 15, bye. But if it falls a certain way, they might be like, we got to get up there now, because these guys aren't going to make it, But that's part of the fun of the draft. We don't really know how it's going to go. And, teams are always potentially going to teams are always going to mess around and do stuff that's unexpected, and boards don't line up with media consensus. They just don't. And we'll have to see how it plays out. That's part of the fun again of this class and just the draft in general, is that you don't know. There's always going to be some shocks. I'm talking about you, Cleveland Farrell, in the top 5. But I'm curious what the biggest shocker will be. Do you have any, and from like the buzz or anything that you've heard, is there like a certain shocker that you're maybe expecting in the first round at some point that fans just aren't ready for?
I actually think that the draft is going to be a little boring this year. I don't know if there will be too many shocking moves at all. I think that the most shocking thing would be like Dart actually being a first round quarterback. I don't see that happening. I think that like I just don't see it there. I think that this is like a combination of like the Desmond Ridder QB class and like the Jameis Winston, Marcus Mariota class, where it was like those two, nobody else, and then like you just have this group of guys who are all really second or third round career backups. So yeah, honestly, what would be crazy to me, I think, is if we see, which it sounds like it's happening. We were talking about this being like a really weak tackle class, but it sounds like there could be 4 tackles taken in the top 10 or the top 15. So, because that seems like the position that a lot of teams would want to move up for, because the fall off is pretty hard after day one in terms of tackle talent. So, I think that is probably maybe like the most surprising thing, considering where the conversation started about this group of tackles and what it's led us to. Other than that, though, I think it's going to kind of be pretty standard. What about you?
So the biggest buzz I've been hearing, and shout out to the NFL Stock Exchange pod for this, I think multiple of their hosts that they had on their marathon mock that they did over the weekend, where they did all 7 rounds live, which is, if you want to watch like 7 hours of draft coverage because you're a degenerate like me, then you can turn that on. But Maxwell Hairston is going to go in the first round. And
okay,
I'm not there. Like, first of all, like I'm not on Mac. Like, I think Maxwell Hairston's a day 2 player, but like NFL loves him apparently. So apparently they would be shocked if he doesn't end up in the first round. That just seems to be the buzz.
Okay.
Who knows if it's
I had him as a candidate falling to 46.
I could see that.
First
I think the Falcons like him too.
A little rich, but
that
would definitely be a surprise.
Yeah, and like Gene T's probably going to go top 5, and people are saying Jacksonville.
I've seen that one going today.
That's an interesting one.
And Oladejo out of UCLA. Maybe him going. I think if he goes in the top half of the second, that would kind of be a pretty bold move. Kind of came out of nowhere, I feel like, during this process. But I know he's had a ton of top 30 visits. Brett Coleman has been talking about him a ton and thinks that he's going to be. He thinks he's going to be a first-round pick. I think a first-round pick would be crazy. But yeah, he's probably maybe the only other guy I've heard big talk about.
Yeah. I was hearing there's also some weird buzz about Tyler Shuck being like the 3rd QB on a lot of teams' boards, which
man, this guy.
Please do, teams. Please do. You have my full support.
I thought Dart was like the most Arthur Smith coded quarterback until I watched this guy play. And then I was like, oh, this is peak.
Oh my God, it's Ryan Tannehill.
Combined the worst qualities of Tannehill and Ritter and put them together. And like that is Tyler Shuck. Like he's infuriating to watch. He had a combine clip go viral of his drop. I know people are like, it's just a combine. I'm like, yeah, man. And you can't do a normal drop back at the combine. Like, come on. Like, what are we doing?
Oh my
here?
God, that looked exactly like Uncle Rico throwing the steak off his plate.
It's bad. It was bad. It skipped like a rock in front of the receiver. I know he got a boost from media like a couple weeks ago, but I'm just like, this is like the most unathletic athletic quarterback I've ever seen. He's just doing the goofiest stuff on the field, throwing the ball behind him, like just shenanigans on a 10 the entire time.
He kind of reminds me of Uncle Rico a little bit too. Like just his like mannerisms. I was like, oh my god, it's Uncle Rico. Yeah. Like, he's just out there like by his truck, just oh god, yeah, that would I need this to happen.
Sidearm that one through a window. Like, yeah, man, sure.
Oh my god. Yeah. So that I don't get that one. But like I get Jalen Milroe because teams are like, he's a 4.3, high 4.3 quarterback. Yeah. Who has a good arm and like, he's young and we can develop him. Like teams go down, they take the cheese on that all the time. So, I wouldn't blame someone for thinking they could, maybe coax, discount Lamar Jackson out of Jalen in like several years. I think that's not likely, but I could see someone. I mean, people took Will Levis in the second round, and people took Anthony Richardson in the top 5.
What'd that guy do? He never had a good football game.
Never.
That Will Levis guy.
He only had the one, unfortunately, but yeah. That bought him an entire year of starting.
I know. I'm like, you know what? I'm glad that happened because we ruined the Titans for a whole year.
Yeah.
That's
sorry, Tennessee. Yeah.
Like, you think you embarrassed us? You just embarrassed yourself by banking on that game.
Yep. Don't give people hope. That's the most dangerous thing of all. But I think to me, like the best. This is a total topic shift. But to me, the best path for a trade down is probably having Will Campbell, Armand Membu, and Kelvin Banks go before 15, because that will send some teams into panic mode, like the Texans in particular. Like, oh my God, they're not going to make it. Like, they're not going to make it. They may not even make it to 21. Because it seems like teams are happy with Josh Simmons' medicals. That was the last vibes I got.
Simmons' name in that group too.
Yes,
like,
exactly.
Simmons is gone. Like,
yeah, and Simmons' tape, the small amount we saw, great. I mean, really good. So I think a lot of teams, if he was healthy, would have had him as like tackle 2, tackle 1, especially for left tackles. He doesn't, because size-wise, he doesn't have any of the Will Campbell concerns. Although I think Will Campbell actually measuring him with 33-inch arms instead of the guy who got his measurements wrong, that helps him. 33-inch arms is fine. It's not great, but it's fine. We're not talking about
Will Campbell, but I'm like, I definitely think you're playing inside at the next level. But
we're not talking about like Willie Lampkin, less than 30-inch arms.
5'10", no, yeah.
Oh my God.
Not like,
I can't believe people are like, oh, he's a day 2 pick.
Yeah.
It's like, okay.
I'll take Willie Lampkin. Like, that guy's a baller. He's gonna find some kind of role for himself.
Yeah. I love Willie Lampkin as like a depth player who, like, against certain matchups he's gonna crush it, but against other matchups he's not gonna crush it. He's gonna get crushed.
Fans ride for Jonathan Gwynn. I would ride for Willie Lampkin. He actually has the dog mentality for me to be like, yeah, you know what, my like third on the center, like he could be somebody if they just gave him a chance. Like,
yeah. Somebody you got to throw behind, but I think. Because it seems like Kelvin Banks to the Dolphins is picking up a lot of steam. And so I think if those 3 tackles go, that's a definite path for Atlanta to get a trade down at 15. So
Dolphins are a big wild card. They're like the team where I'm like, you need everything. Like, you need everything. And like, it's another team where I also feel like very underrated Shedeur landing spot. Like, again, it would be super random, but I'm just kind of like, it doesn't seem like the Tua relationship is glowing. It doesn't seem like it's getting better by the year. And if they want a long-term plan, we know that their ownership has been one to step in. And if he's there, like, you could easily see them rationalizing that as like their own Michael Penix, Kirk Cousins kind of scenario where it's like, yeah, we know we got Tua assigned to a big deal, but we all see how that's going. So take a shot here. But
Tua's one concussion away from retirement now. I mean, so it's like, I mean, I hate it for him. And it's just the way it is. Same thing with Chris Olave. I mean, it's just like I hope they never have another concussion in their life, but like every snap is a chance. And it's just, these guys haven't exactly shown that they've had a great track record of avoiding them either. And it's just how some guys are wired, it's just the way it is. So people just, you go play football and you play football a certain way. And if you play, they play hard, right? And if you play hard, you're leaving yourself open to those hits. And it's brutal. It's brutal out there. So, obviously hope those guys can continue to play, but I don't think it's out of the question that we see these teams try to move on or find, long-term solutions, because I think at this point it's like a year-to-year thing with both of those guys. So, but yeah, it seems like the buzz on like Tet McMillan is kind of cooled off. Like teams, like he may not go top 8, top 10, which I find surprising, but I think Tet's really good. No, I'm not suggesting the Falcons take him if he falls to 15. But
that would be so funny because
Falcons have the opportunity to do the funniest thing ever. Yeah.
he's like a Drake London type to me too, and so like the initial thinking is like, well, they wouldn't want to like double up on like those similar skill sets, but then I'm like thinking of the Rams, and I'm like, actually, yeah, if you live in 11 personnel. Like the Rams did it, they were like, well, we're going to go out and get another version of Cooper Kupp with Puka and get somebody who can run these same route trees, do the blocking and whatnot. And so then I'm like looking at Tet film and I'm like, oh no.
Yeah, the value would be good. Like I'm not advocating for another receiver, guys, but it's like the value would objectively be good there.
What if they trade down?
Yes, exactly. I think if he actually falls to 15, that's another great trade down opportunity, because at that point he could go at any pick. So if somebody's like, oh crap, we want him, that's an opportunity as well.
Maybe the Chiefs keep calling for a real receiver or something. Like, oh no.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I think in this class, those big trade ups are much more possible because, like, again, I think teams like the Falcons won't be demanding super high trade compensation, so you might be able to pull off those big trades that in other years you might not. Because look, everybody knows this is a deep group. Like once you get to 15-ish, like this is kind of a big group of guys that are, from like 15 to 40, it's like kind of all in the same clump, depending on the position, obviously. But like, I think for a team like the Falcons, there's a lot of guys in that range that they would be happy to get. And you'd feel pretty comfortable if you could trade down, from like, I mean, the earlier the better, but, if you could get to like 30, you're still going to have your pick of a good player there, 32, whatever. Even like 33 with the Browns, I think you're going to have an opportunity. Like, it seems like somebody's always there, whether that's like Walter Nolan or whether that's Malachi Starks or whether that's, James Pierce or one of these guys. Like, someone's going to be there. It just always is that way. And if those guys aren't there, but that means there's probably some other offensive player that, shouldn't be there. So maybe you trade down again, get real weird with it, Like if they trade down to 33, then we know, like, once they're in the second round, they're much more likely to trade it, at that point. So, Terry loves to trade in the second round. That's his thing. So,
yeah, he does. And honestly, the more I look at it, it kind of seems very possible that there's some kind of small movement on these second days, because that is where you, I think, benefit the most from a deep class in some of the areas that we've talked about is by making a move on day 2, day 3, trading up, 10, 15 spots, packaging a couple of 6 or 7s together. So, pick 46 has real value. And again, like we talk about these guys in the first round that can fall, there's still some decent players that can fall to 46. And the Falcons can move down 10 spots into the 50s or something like that and pick up, if you can pick up a 4th or a 5th round pick in this draft class, I think that's like, a legitimate asset and something that you can get a really good player out of, whether it be, that depth tackle, that Chase Lund type in round 4, or if it's a center, you look at Jonah Monaheim, or you look at some of these other guys who are all projected to go in rounds 4 or 5. There's legitimate options and reasons to make that move out of 46. So, we have put a lot of focus on 15, but, it's definitely not the only movement, opportunity for them in this class.
Yeah, I will deliver a bold prediction, and that is if they don't trade 15, they will trade 46. I don't know what direction because they're crazy, but like,
yeah,
they might trade up. I don't know.
Like hard day 2,
yeah.
Like if they don't get anything day 1, that sounds like the approach that they're probably going to.
I think they will trade 46 if they don't trade 15. But to me, like, I think they would love to trade down into like the late 50s and get Jared Wilson. I think they would love to do that because Jared Wilson at 46 is early. Like that, it is what it is. He's also going to go in the second round. I'm pretty sure. Like late second, early third, but he's going to be gone. And the Falcons don't even have a third round pick, so it's not like he's an option in the third for them. But I think they want Jared Wilson, and I think they would love to trade down into the 50s to make that happen. But like you said, Tre'Shon, if you trade to like, say you trade down 10 spots to 56, I don't even know who picks there. So just, approximately 10 spots wherever. You could probably get like a 4th and a 6th for that. They don't have a 6th. They don't have a 5th. So if you could get, 2 more, again, that 4th could be a key depth rotational piece. Like you mentioned, offensive tackle, a depth tackle, a developmental guy, slot corner, nose tackle, all that type of stuff. They need those guys. So you can get value there. A 6th could also be helpful for like a returner, a wide receiver, depth piece, linebacker, whatever. That anything will help. So I think they would love to do that sort of, second round trade down, still get Jared Wilson, who they like, and then be able to grab a couple extra picks to round out this class.
Yeah. Yeah. And, like Drew Dahlman is a good example of like, he was pick 114. He was a 4th round pick. Like, I know it's really easy to jump to and be like, well, has Terry proved that he can even get value in those rounds? Like he has, yes. Like he's done it before. And it's kind of the sweet spot for taking centers and developmental guys is like these round 4, round 5 areas. So, it's definitely worth it. Like I know a lot of people are really tied up on like, well, we should just really package up all of our picks and just trade them away or whatever because we suck at drafting. And it's like, I get it. Like it's not a great drafting track record. I also think that the direction that this GM head coach combo is heading, at least on paper, makes more sense than the Arthur Smith, Terry Fontenot, I think GM head coach combo, because even though they went about it in a very different way, they attacked the trenches last year, which is something we didn't really see them do in a big way previously. And I think it's pointing towards them, making more investments on that side of the football. Because Terry was here for 3 years with Art, and the focus was very much offense. It was very clear. Like when you look at players we traded for, we're sending picks for Van Jefferson. We're like making these really weird moves to like max out Arthur Smith's offense, which he caps out himself with his own scheme, and not very much attention onto the defense, where we're just going to make our coach figure it out, like turn like one of the worst rosters into one of the best performing one. And hey, Nielsen did a pretty good job at that 1 year, but like as we've seen, talent matters. And I think that Raheem understands that there needs to be a focus on the defense, and I think Terry understands that too. So just trying to hope that they use these kinds of moves so that they can focus on the defense early, and then you take that developmental guy in the 4th for your O-line, because at some point you have to like actually take a similar approach with the offense that you do with the defense, and that's that the coaches have enough, and that they are going to have to be able to figure out how to make our 4 first-round picks that touch the ball all the time work. And the defense needs to just get 1 first-round pick besides AJ Terrell on that side of the football.
Yeah. I mean, I do wonder, like, secondary-wise, like, I'm big on safety. I would love, like, Xavier Watts at 46. I kind of just, like, don't think they're going to do it. Like, not because they don't like Watts or the safeties. Like, they've visited with a lot of safeties. I think they would love to, but it's, like, for all the reasons we mentioned. Like, they're probably going to want to trade that pick if they don't trade in the first round. And they're probably going to use it on Jared Wilson, even if he's there. So, whether it's Watts or whether it's Kevin Winston Jr., who's kind of picked up some steam, whether it's, Emanwari, if you're one of those Emanwari folks, which, I'm not as in on Emanwari. I think he's a lot more of a project than people want to admit. But, I think there's a number of good players on day 2. Like, I would love to get more day 2 picks. This is the perfect class for it.
Same here.
That's why that trade down is so critical for Atlanta. But everyone's trying to do that. So
everybody's
it's not
trying.
Gonna be easy. It's not going to be easy.
Get it done day 1.
Yep.
Lock up some picks for day 2, because hey, then maybe even on day 2, if you have, like, again, if you're able to pull off that move and you're able to trade with Houston, you're able to trade with somebody, well, you feel even better about moving back or doing something a little funky that day because you actually have the ammunition to do so. But if you're caught in the moment waiting, that's kind of when, maybe a bad decision is made. Maybe we do like miscalculate the ROI on this. So, the hope is that they just draft good players, right?
Yeah, that's the crux of this whole thing is draft good players. It doesn't matter where you draft them, just draft good players. That's the key. Again, like even if it's not the biggest need, if you get contributors, that's what's most important because you need to start locking up contributors that aren't going to cost you tons of money. That's what the draft's all about. You need to find pieces on your roster that you don't have to pay, which is why these, people are like, oh, well, why wouldn't you just trade a bunch of picks for Jalen Ramsey? Like, you're not going to get a fourth rounder that's as good as Jalen Ramsey. Jalen Ramsey's expensive. Like, you can't pay everybody on your team. Now, Jalen Ramsey's not going to be that expensive. I mean, we're talking maybe like 6, 7, 8, after the trade is done post June 1st, so it's not crazy, but that's like that fourth round pick's gonna be making $1 million, right? Yeah. I mean, it's like, so that's 9 times as cheap, right? You save $8 million. Now you're not going to get Jalen Ramsey, but you're also not going to be spending that money. And the money is really important too, for the long-term health of your roster. So,
yeah. And, Bates needs to get paid. He's going into the final year of his deal. So, you're always trying to think ahead, and look, we can talk about Ramsey, and obviously the 2 years that he'd be here for, I think would be great. I know a lot of people are concerned that oh, well, this could just be like Judon, and it's like I think a lot of people have forgotten that Judon was coming off an injury, which makes his situation, always, again, that risk was always there with that move. But you got guys in this draft class. First of all, I don't know what Ramsey would play here. I think he would probably be moved to safety. But in this class, Quincy Riley's, Cameron Jackson, who talk about our 7th round nose tackle plan getting blown up. This guy's climbed all the way up the consensus board into the 4th round at this point. So not really sure if we're going to get that 7th round steal like we were hoping originally. But these are players who, they're going to be able to step on the field and fill a role for you. And like you're saying, that's really what this team needs more than anything right now, is it needs to substantially raise the floor of its role players, because right now the ones they have are all on these short-term, prove it deals, expiring contracts, or we re-sign them back because they know the system. And that's just not good enough to get the job done in the key moments. We've seen these players and what happens to them in those key moments. So we need guys who can raise the floor. And like you're saying, on day 2, there's so many options. So it just really feels like, if they can do anything to work and get that kind of a deal, they've got to get it done. But also it means that there might be some overdrafting with that 46 pick if they can't do it. Jared Wilson, are we going to be mad if Jared Wilson's a 9-year starter, but we took him at pick 46? No one's going to care. Nobody's going to care at that point anymore. So we were saying, just draft good players, man. All of this means nothing if the guys you draft are good, which I know, very, very deep analysis there. But it's really that simple. Once we get past this draft class, none of this matters anymore. It's just what are you on the field?
Yeah, basically, the draft value is something that's invented by the media. It really where was he on the team's board? Where was he on other teams' boards? You don't know? Okay, so how do you know if it was a reach or not? It's just your opinion. It's all opinion. The whole draft is opinion. Even the team's boards are opinion. So, it's just the nature of it.
That's why they play the games.
That's why you gotta play the games, folks. But yeah, there's, I wanted to move just to day 3 guys, our guys. You mentioned Cameron Jackson. Yeah, it seems like that was, too good to be true that he would fall. But another guy that I saw you drafted that I think is actually in play as maybe a 4th, 5th, 6th rounder, Drew Kendall from Boston College. The Falcons definitely visited with him as well. We know they like Boston College.
He's been working out with Chris Lindstrom.
Yep. He's currently going in the 7th, but my guess is he would be an earlier pick. He's one I would keep an eye on, if they don't go the Jared Wilson route. Drew Kendall, 4th round pick, successor to, Drew Dahlman. I would prefer it like as a 5th rounder or a 6th rounder, but
Yeah.
they don't in case folks don't know, they don't have 5th or 6th rounders. So, you may have to overdraft someone on day 3 if you want them, but I think he's someone that's really interesting. You mentioned we talked about Danny Stutzman, he could make sense. We talked about I think Smail Mondon from Georgia, they've worked out a couple times now, so he could be a late round linebacker.
There's another guy that's climbing up boards too recently. So he's somebody that I was like 7th round pick. Great. Now it looks like he's going in this 5th and 6th round.
Yep. Yeah, they always take him from us at the last minute. But yeah, I mean, any day 3 guys that you're really feeling strongly about at this point?
Yeah, again, starting off with Zeke Biggers. Obviously, the Zeke dream looks like it's still alive. So Zeke Biggers, I think, would be fantastic pull for the team. I don't know about like 118. I don't know about that high in the 4th. So like I'm really hoping that he can stay there. But maybe that's the package of those 2 7ths move up to the end of the 6 type move. Really big fan of his game. Just a legit 3-4 nose tackle, who I think offers, legitimate versatility. It'd be interesting to see, just because of his build, it's like, hey, can this guy do some 4-eye work? Could he do some 3-tech? Could he play across the line? Because he's got the body type to be able to play, kind of any position. And they really need the nose, but they really need that run defense support, which is why, I think he's a great pick. And I think the other guy out of Shrine who was very early on this guy, and I'm really happy to see him climbing up the boards now. And that's Tyler Batty. Batty went from like being a round 7, round 6 UDFA graded guy. Now he's in the rounds 4 or 5. He's really picked up. He's gaining some steam on the consensus board, and like it's just very he's very John Kaminsky-esque. His dude is extremely solid build. He is fantastic against the run, which again I know people want to hear fantastic against the pass rusher first, but with Batty, you're able to play this guy early. You're able to actually get a rotational piece out of him, I believe, and he has that 3-4-4-3 versatility. Nobody's 100% sure on what the team wants to do right now. And I think they want to do what most defenses are able to do, which is be multiple. And so when I look at guys who fit that bill, Batty's probably one of the best day 3 gets in terms of that versatility, because he has enough play strength to play on the run. One like thing that comes to mind to me is like he was just absolutely stonewalling Holland Pierce, who I don't know if people know who Holland Pierce is, but he's like the biggest player in the draft. He's the biggest player at Shrine. And like, so it's good to see big on big, and Batty's handling him with very little issue. I don't think he lost 2 reps in a row when I was there, whether it was in teams or individual drills. And just his mentality as a football player was really fun to hear. He talked to me about earning the right to rush the passer, talked about being physical on those rundowns early and often so that you can chase after the QB. So he's probably the other guy out of the Shrine Bowl that I'm really high on in terms of, day 3, who can play for the Falcons right away, or who can offer them something, because you and I have talked about the signings that we do have, and we look at like Morgan Fox and we look at Leonard Floyd. These are not your run defenders. These are not the guys that have made their career out of being able to stop the run. They get after the quarterback. So who are the guys that are going to be able to fill in around them? And Biggers and Batty are 2 names that really come to mind for me.
Yeah, I like those. Those are good shout outs there. 2 guys I think should be in play for Atlanta, and we'll see. We'll see what they end up doing. I think that they'll end up with probably more day 3 picks, but less 7th round picks. That's my hope, at least. That's my hope. We'll see if they make us stay till 242. Yes, they usually they don't. But 2 more names I'm going to throw at you guys before we sign off. Quandarius Robinson, Q. I think they like him. I like him. 4th round pick type range. I think he's one of those edge rushers to bet on if you're looking for like maybe an Ebiketie like successor. If they don't want to pay Ebiketie next year, I think Q is obviously not as far along as Ebiketie is or was as a rookie, but similar. I mean, he's got better size.
Dude saw like he didn't
Yeah.
work out at Shrine, but he was there during the interview process, and I mean, like physically, he stood out
Oh
among
yeah.
everybody. He is like, yeah, he's solidly built dude.
Yeah. Yeah. And we'll see how that goes. Also, Logan Brown, the Kansas tackle, the Falcons visited
That's a
with
good
him.
one.
He's a guy I think in that mid to late day 3 range if they're looking for that developmental tackle. Again, I think they want tackle. I just don't think they want it at 15. He's someone that I like. And you mentioned Holland Pierce too. He's been a fixture of my 7th rounds. So I think they do keep those 7th round picks. He's a little, I think I've seen him described as lumbering, and I guess I would agree with that. I think he moves fine, but he's also like 6'8", 330. He's a brick shithouse. I mean, he's a massive dude. Right tackle and left tackle experience. Not going to probably be, I mean, he's done well as a zone blocker. He can do all the stuff, but he's not going to be this elite mover, right? So you would have to kind of accept that if you're going that route. But, I would take a chance on him on day 3. Absolutely. I mean, that type of size. Yeah, I'm in. So it also seems like the Falcons really like Isaiah Bond, which I don't personally get.
Yeah.
I don't personally get. He doesn't seem to match them. Obviously, he's dealing with stuff as well, which would seem to probably take him off the board for them. But again, Mike Green also had that in his past, and they seem to be interested, or maybe not. We don't really know. But Bond now seems like he's going to be a day 3 pick. Yeah. So maybe at that price they're interested, just not at like, 2nd, 3rd round where he was projected to go initially.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. And I think wide receivers definitely in play. And Bond, like I think I get what you're saying, because it's like when I think of the wide receiver they need, like he has like an element of it, but it's like, again, it goes back to the blocking and everything like that. So it's like I'm not really sure he's going to be able to do that part of the job if they're going to be in 11 again. So he's an interesting name to where it's like, well, if that guy's there on day 3, you can come up with a package or two for him. I'm still bullish on LeJontay Wester.
Yep.
I
like Wester better.
Yeah. I mean, I love him, and it's just one of those things where I'm like, we have like, we already have Ray Ray on the roster or whatever, and that feels like a pick to kind of directly push Ray Ray off or be ready for Ray Ray's departure. And they signed Agnew, so there's a little duplicity in there. So I don't really know if that one's going. But Elijah Huzzie is a name that I also really like, and he fits the team's type in terms of like DB. And what I mean by that is like older player, lots of starts, high floor. You know exactly what you're going to get. Not a superb athlete, more of a technician. And like when you look at like the guys that like they've drafted, when it's like Clark Phillips or the cornerbacks that they've brought in, I think Mike Hughes probably is the most athletic of the bunch, but the rest are like D. Alford, Antonio Hamilton. They like these kind of more undersized technical cornerbacks, and Huzzie is like a legit slot DB. I think like he has like the ability to thrive there and really push, I think, Alford for that spot. So he's another name, I think, in that day 3 range where it just would seemingly make a lot of sense. And I'm pushing a lot of Shrine guys this year, and that's only because one of the big reasons for that is like we had a guy in the building. We had our own special teams coordinator, Marquise, holding it down. And, I was there and saw that there was like a decent contingent of Falcon scouts. So guys like Chandler Martin, who's been brought up, linebacker from Memphis, who a lot of people have liked. He's a name that I think could make a lot of sense as well. The dark horse is, of course, going to be the lefty, Ben Sauls out of Pitt. It'd be really interesting to see, the special teams coordinator got to look at what I think is probably the best or the most powerful kicker in this draft class. Kicks the outdoors in the Northeast in Pittsburgh. Like you already kind of get a really big check next to your name when that was like your college kicking environment, because that is a brutal place to have to do it. And he showed that he has the leg. Don't know with Lenny Craig making his appearance, this year might put some thorns in that plan, but last year, we heard they need to have a backup plan for kicker ready to go. So what's one more?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's always good to have those guys. Another one that I've kind of been on a little bit quietly, just because it hasn't really come together in a mock yet. But former UCF legend Dylan Gabriel. If the Falcons are going to move on from Kirk, which I still think they will at some point, Easton Stick doesn't move the needle for me. I think he's a fine QB3 who can, maybe be your backup if you had to. But look, Gabriel's a lefty. I think they will want a lefty backup for Kirk if they can. I think you can get Gabriel late on day 3 because of his size. I think he's a perfect backup. I don't think he's a starter or anything, but I think he's an ideal backup. I think he can actually be a good backup. I just don't think you want him out there getting, smashed. He's basically like Bryce Young, without all the pop, like all the flash.
Size, guys,
yeah. He's 6 foot. He's thick, but
it's like 5'11", 5'9", 5'10". It gets shorter every time.
yeah. Every time you see him, but I think Gabriel's a good quarterback. Like, he knows how to play the position. He throws with great anticipation and touch and placement and all that stuff. He just doesn't have a great arm. He's not a great athlete, and he's small. So it's like he's not going to be an NFL starter. He doesn't check those boxes. But if you're looking for an ideal,
Gardner Minshew's making a career out of those attributes.
Exactly. If you're looking for an ideal backup for Penix in particular, that also is a lefty, to make sure you don't have to switch anything up if Penix has to come out, I think Gabriel's a perfect one to bet on. And if he comes in and plays good for 3 or 4 games, then you go the Patriots method of flipping him for a pick. So, I think Gabriel has a great shot to be one of those rookies that comes in and can be the backup in year 1. So
I do like that. I like thinking about, it'd be nice to have a backup who's a lefty because everybody talked about the spin factor, but it was real. We saw what happened when Penix initially got in. We saw London and other guys make some drops that are a little bit more uncharacteristic. And I know that there's other former players, they all are split on this, but the science is real. The ball does spin a different direction, and that is going to have an effect on the receiver in terms of just how it feels coming into their hands. So if you can kind of get rid of that during the transition, then it would be nice to have somebody like Gabriel. The backup quarterback that I've kind of thrown out there, or like an option for them that I think could also be Graham Mertz out of Florida. You could see him as like a UDFA guy. I think he's a little underrated. Very similar in that he's just somebody who is I think built to be a backup quarterback. He's going to be able to run and carry out the offense. And he's going to be able to do his job. I don't think he's really going to be anything more than a QB2, but with the Stick signing, I kind of looked at that as okay, the team had to have some form of a competent backup QB in the building. I think he fits some form of a competent backup quarterback where it's you don't want this guy to play, but it's whatever. He's done it before, and I think he's the same tier as Heineke. I know Heineke has a lot of lovers because he was, he had that one magical run in DC, but outside of that, I'm this dude's just kind of running around back there. And that's kind of what Stick will do if he gets the opportunity to play. They have to have a Stick. They have to have these placeholders because if somebody calls for Kirk tomorrow, they need to have somebody in the building already where they can at least pencil them in as QB2. But the draft, I think, offers them a couple of good options from the UDFA angle or with one of those late 7s in terms of trying to find a guy to fill that role for Penix. And I like Gabriel a lot in that scenario.
Yeah. I think it's a good match of value and fits uniquely well for Atlanta or Miami, perhaps, with Tua. But
he might just be a personality hire, but he seems like such a nice guy. He does all these videos, and he would immediately be the people's champ because as soon as fans saw him, they feel like one of us is in the building.
Yeah, there you go.
They've got a normal guy back there who's just living
one of the guys. So yeah, I think we covered a lot of our favorite guys, the buzz we're hearing, all the stuff that's going on. Anything else you want to finish on here, Tre'Shon?
Nothing else. And I'm sure we'll have plenty more to talk about tomorrow. And then we know we're going to have plenty to talk about Thursday.
Yes, there will be no shortage, guys. Thank you for joining us here on the Dirty Birds and Brews podcast. I know it says Final Falcons draft predictions in the title, but there's still 2 more days, so that there will be more. There will be more, but we gotta hype it up a little bit. But
the final thoughts.
Yeah, the final countdown thoughts coming.
The outline of the final thoughts.
Yeah, this is like we're gonna start building the house, and then we're gonna fill it with furniture. But thank you guys for joining us. Appreciate you. Appreciate Tre'Shon coming on and taking us through this draft season. He's at Tre'Shon on Twitter and Tre'Shon.io on the Blue Sky. I'm Kevin Knight of Alcoholic Kevin. Please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Join us, of course, on Wednesday and all 3 nights of the draft. If you haven't signed up to support the show on Patreon or on the YouTube channel memberships, you can do that too. But yeah, we'll see you guys on Wednesday. We'll see you guys on Thursday and on Friday and on Saturday. You might be sick of us by the time the draft is over, but hopefully not. But guys, thanks so much for joining us. Draft's almost here. We've almost made it. So until next time, we will see you guys here on the Dirty Birds and Brews podcast. Have a great day, folks.